Is Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity a canon Zelda game? Is a question I'm sure many of you have been asking ever since completing the game, and it's one that I've been asking as well. This game was marketed before release as a prequel to Breath of the Wild, the story we never were told 100 years ago. We have only seen fragments of it through memories in Breath of the Wild, but now we get to play through it. But the thing is, if you've actually played Age of Calamity, you know that's not quite true. Terraco, the Calamity came early, the champions did not die, the fall of Akala Citadel did not happen, Fort Hateno went completely different than last time, we saw the Yiga join forces with the Highlands and everyone else, and all of Hyrule united and took out Calamity Canon. This is most certainly not the story we thought it was going to be. But even with all that, I still think this is a canon story. And now, I'll tell you why. Hey everybody, Xeno here, and I hope you've been enjoying Age of Calamity as much as I have. It is such a fun game, and such a fun game to watch story-wise as well, even if it has been messing with my brain oh so much, as we will get into here in just a minute. But before we jump into this discussion though, I do feel there's a need to point out that there is not a concrete answer right now. No one has come out from the development team and said, yes, this is a concrete 100% canon Zelda story, or there's no one that has come out and said, no, this is not a canon story. Right now we're just going off of what has been implied and the fact that just the announcement trailer for this game really sounded like this is a canon story. So I think it is a canon story, and I'm going to tell you why and how it is so geniusly brilliant, but at the same time a little sketchy and interesting, but yeah. Also, this is a bit more of a discussion video, not a scripted video, but I do have some really great ideas in the works coming very soon. So make sure that if you haven't already, subscribe so you can see those very soon. But anyway, let's just get into the discussion already. So, canon game. So throughout my first playthrough, there was a steady stream of doubt on where this story was going. And you can see this just by watching my playthrough up on the channel right now. I question over and over again, is this going to be a canon Zelda game? Now, I've finally come to my conclusion on that, and one of the most interesting things that led me to finalize this conclusion is actually on a loading screen. Yeah, that's right. So like the first mission that I played after finishing the game, I remember seeing this. Splintered Worlds. When Terraco, pursued by Ganon's malice, arrived from the future, a new world was born. So breaking down this statement to its basic message, they are basically saying this is a new timeline, which is what we feared from the very beginning when we first saw that cutscene in the demo, that Terraco was traveling back in time. But now we have our confirmation on this loading screen that that is exactly what happened here, and it's genius and a little... So why is this genius? Well, first of all, it's genius from a marketing perspective. They can market this game as a prequel to Breath of the Wild, the story from 100 years ago, while at the same time not adhering to any of the rules laid out by that story, the basic building blocks of what we know were going to happen from the memories. All of that is off the table now because this is 100 years ago, but it's not the 100 years ago we know. So Nintendo's marketing message of this being a prequel was not technically in the wrong. This still is that same time period, but it's not in the same timeline of events. It's in a timeline where Breath of the Wild doesn't happen because these different events play out and we have a different conclusion and a whole different story, but it is still 100 years ago. So in a sense, it's not exactly a prequel, but did they even use prequel in the marketing a lot? I feel like they were more keen to say, the story of 100 years ago, experienced the Great Calamity, which is exactly what we got. That's exactly what they showed us. So it's a little sleazy what they were doing there. They kind of like threading that line, but at the same time, it's commendable because they were really good about not showing us everything about the story. I was really worried when 2 days before the game came out, Nintendo released a launch trailer for the game, because I thought they were going to most likely reveal every secret about the game in that trailer and just show off all of the story beats that were going to be so exciting to see in in action, which is why I didn't do a reaction to it. I did a reaction to every other trailer except for that one because I was scared of it. Going back and watching it now, though, they don't show any of this. From that trailer, you cannot tell that the story is going to shift in such a dramatic way. We've got hints of this the entire time. There's been small discrepancies, but there's no huge show-offs of like the champions being there, the Calamity arriving early, working with the Yiga, any of that. No. And it's amazing. Also, just like going back and looking at the scenarios, if you look at each of the scenarios in the game and just look at them by the title, it makes sense. You go to the Divine Beast to fight the Blights. You go to Akala Citadel after that for the Fall, and then you go to Fort Hateno. It's all in symmetrical order, but the events are different. So I do find it pretty commendable that Nintendo was like, hey, we are going to keep these surprises. We are not going to tell people that this is a different story. It's going to diverge until they have it in their hands. Now, a lot of people might say they disagree with that, and they think that they should have been upfront with this being a story that is not the same and just tell us that. But I do find that commendable at the same time. So I'm kind of like on both sides there. I play both sides because I do think they should have told us this is a different story to temper expectations, but I'm also like, those moments were so much more impactful because we didn't know. So it was genius from a marketing perspective, but it was also genius from a storytelling perspective. This allowed Koei Tecmo to make their own Zelda story, and I'm sure Nintendo was also involved in this. I'm pretty sure they even say that in like the credits. It's the director of Breath of the Wild oversaw this story, but it allowed them to tell a new story. It allowed them to give us something that we didn't already know to an extent. We knew how it was going to end and all that. And some people might say, well, I wanted to see the story that you promised us and the story that we know happened, but I want to see it in more detail. But they went for this route, and I'm really conflicted on this again because I want to see exactly what happened in the 100 years prior to Breath of the Wild, but now we have this other one too, and I'm really a big fan of this one, but I still want to see the other one, like the one from Breath of the Wild. So like, make another Warriors game about 100 years ago again, I guess. So that would be a little repetitive, but you get my point, right? We still are never going to get to see the 100 years ago from Breath of the Wild's timeline, and it's just interesting. This also means that Age of Calamity can take place in an isolated vacuum. It doesn't have to impact any of the other Zelda games on the timeline. It doesn't have to have a direct impact on Breath of the Wild 2 or Breath of the Wild even, because it's isolated. It's its own separate timeline branch now. And if they want to ever expand on that, they can, but I don't think they will. I feel like their genius final plan was, hey, let's tell a new Zelda Warriors canon story and say it's canon, but it doesn't have to be a part of what we've already created. It's just a separate timeline branch, and we don't really have to do anything with it if we don't want to. Because remember, Terrako starts this game in Breath of the Wild's universe. We see this cutscene, which all but confirms this is what's happening over at Hyrule Castle when Link and Zelda are at Fort Hateno. But in that moment when he goes back in time, he changes everything, just as the description on the loading screen says, a splintered world. We have a new timeline here that he has just created by going back in time. And it's just the moment he arrives, that's what happens. It even explains the Harbinger Ganon Terrako we see throughout Age of Calamity as well, because that is Age of Calamity's Terrako. The one we see throughout the game by our side is actually from the timeline of Breath of the Wild. So it even takes away the idea of, hey, Terrako can reappear in Breath of the Wild too. No, he can't, because they're both in the same universe right now. So Terrako is out of the picture for the mainline games unless they want to bring him back for some reason, which is another just brilliant way of isolating this while still saying, hey, this is canon. And that's why they needed the Malice to come back in that cutscene as well. Not just Terrako, but the Malice that follows him, because that Malice takes a hold of the Terrako of Age of Calamity's timeline, and that's how we get Harbinger Ganon Terrako, yes. The only loose end here I could see de-isolating Age of Calamity's story is the current day champions, the champion descendants, if you will, because they do travel back from Breath of the Wild. We know this. You can see in in-game dialogue that they know Link. They say like, oh, it's good to fight alongside you again. This is these are the people we see in Breath of the Wild after the events of Breath of the Wild. So basically, if these people reappear in Breath of the Wild 2 or any future Zelda title, they would have to have memories of going to this alternate world and seeing a world where Calamity did not just destroy everything, right? Like, that's something that they would be able to spread about and basically just tell the other timeline of the existence of Age of Calamity. And it's that's like the one main outlying piece that I'm like, maybe they didn't have it quite all tied up. But the thing is, it's very easy to just flip a switch and say, oh, time travel. You can't remember what you did after traveling through time. They'll go back and they won't remember anything that just happened, you know? It's very easy to just flip off that switch if you want to. So Nintendo and Koei Tecmo really have all the cards in their hands with this. They made a story that was very, very just put into a place that it doesn't have to be used if they don't want it to be used. And it's genius, and it's kind of scummy, but at the same time, it works, and it was still a really great story at the same time. I'm just sad that it's never going to be expanded upon anymore. And the characters that we see just like introduced in Age of Calamity, even them to a point, it's just up in the air if they're going to be expanded upon. Is Aster someone we're going to see in Breath of the Wild 2 or future Zelda games? Is he someone that is going to be even mentioned in the main timeline of Breath of the Wild at some point? Maybe, maybe not. They could go either way, basically. Like, technically he should exist in Breath of the Wild if he does an Age of Calamity, but maybe he just died off 100 years ago, because they can do that because he's most likely human and he would have died at that point. Same thing for Suga. It's really all in their hands right now, which is why it's a little it's not really satisfying, because the story was satisfying on its own, but as far as it goes with ties and connections that we thought we would see, they're not really there. And that's the biggest takeaway right now. It is a canon story. I have very little doubt about that, but does that have any impact on what is actually going to happen? Is this just an isolated game that all the elements of it don't really have to go anywhere? Well, it's all up in the air right now. We're just going to have to see. But the ties are there if they want to use them. So it's really just a waiting game now of seeing what exactly plays out in Breath of the Wild 2, and if Age of Calamity had any impact on it. It's going to be very interesting to see. But there's your answer, at least for me. Age of Calamity is a canon game, but it's an isolated one, so it doesn't really have to mean anything. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you subscribe. We are getting pretty close to 10,000 subscribers, and I would really, really love to get that by the end of the year. So, I mean, if you're not subscribed yet, but you like the content and you're like, hey, maybe it's a thing I should do, here's your incentive. Help us get to 10K, and it's going to be amazing. Maybe we'll do something special, you know? So, that would be great. Thanks, guys. Also, graph. I know that everybody's saying, hey, the graph works, so I'm going to show you this graph, and it better works. Thanks for looking at the graph. And if you did really enjoy the video and you want to see even more from me and content in the channel and all that, you can follow me at Twitter at XenogamerYT, as well as the Discord server below. You can join that and be a part of the community. And we stream on Twitch all the time, so head on over there. It's usually every Friday, so you can catch those if you want on the Twitch channel. So yeah, all links in the description, so check them out. And finally, you can share the video with a friend if you want to help us out even more. And you can just have a really wonderful day for me. Please. Have a great day. Also, new video coming very soon. New videos coming very soon. I have a lot to talk about with Age of Calamity. I mentioned it at the beginning. I have a new theory brewing up right now. That'll be out soon. All about Aster, you know, hooded figure dude. Very excited to talk about him. And everything that he means and could mean and all that. So make sure you stick around. That'll be soon, as well as a bunch of other content. So I hope you guys are excited. I'm excited, and I will see you soon for even more videos. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.